Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news, and it's days like today that remind you just why you love Grand Prix racing here in Singapore. What a race we had, controversy at the start, then a bit of a slow burner, safety cars, great overtaken manoeuvres, different strategies culminating in 4 cars within like 2 seconds, fighting for the win at the end of the race, and chaos to the death as well, with George Russell bidding it in the wall of his own doing with about half a lap to go before he got a podium. Russell and Mercedes not happy about this at all, as Ferrari close in big ground at the Constructors' Championship with Carlos Sainz breaking Red Bull's 15 race win streak. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. We have a lot to get into today because Russell was distraught. There was no other word to say. Now, Ferrari played a masterclass today, putting Leclerc on the softs to jump Russell on the start. But that wasn't really the big talking point at the start. It was Lewis Hamilton going round the outside. So Hamilton got a good start, was up kind of alongside Lando, but then broke really late into turn 1 here. But I think Hamilton was under control. Watching his onboard, I think that if Russell doesn't exist, Hamilton makes this corner. I don't think with too many difficulties. I think he carried in just enough speed to make this corner. And at this point, he is ahead of Norris. Now, the issue is that Russell is here and this is Russell's corner. Then Hamilton has to go off the track because he has no other option. I think it's the second year in a row, isn't it? Because Hamilton and Sainz had a similar situation the year before. But so Hamilton is forced off the track here, and by the time he rejoins, he's actually ahead of Russell as well. Now, I think giving the position back to Russell is fair enough, but the stewards were telling Mercedes, give it back to Lando as well, otherwise you're going to get a 5-second pen, which you can't afford around here with the safety cars that happen. So, yeah, he had to let Norris go as well, which is a little bit interesting. I'm not sure. I can see both sides of it, but I kind of feel like Hamilton almost had that move done. But anyway, the stewards thought they had to give the position back. Yuki Tsunoda, man, it's really tough to be Yuki because Lawson is doing a killer job, but you don't really know how good Lawson is or how good Yuki is because Yuki can't finish a race, and this wasn't his fault. Perez, well, I don't think it was anyway. Perez and Tsunoda came together. Disaster class in Perez, by the way, today. We'll get into that. But yeah, they came together and Tsunoda's car got damaged. He was out of the race. Lap 1, not ideal for him. Magnussen was eaten up a little bit by, of course, Max Verstappen. He started on the hards, and basically Red Bull's strategy was hard tyres and inshallah, like as far as that possibly go, hope for a safety car. And in fairness, if they did get safety car timing well, they could have had a podium here, maybe won the race even, but that was unlikely. So Verstappen was like, all right, get the Hasses and then just settle in and see what happens, because overtaking is challenging, especially if there's a bit of a DRS train ahead. And it's not like the Red Bull had immense pace. We'll talk about Verstappen's pace at the end of the race because it was very good. And still, the Red Bull was probably the joint fastest car in race trim today, which just goes to show how good they are, even on a difficult weekend setup-wise. But nonetheless, they were never in the fight for the victory, but they gave it a go with the strategy they started on. The issue is for them, the safety car didn't arrive on lap 40, it arrived on lap 20, with Sargent hitting the wall. And you know, you got to say, right, for Logan Sargent, look at Piastri, look at Lawson, and how well they're doing with respect to their teammates. Sargent needs to be doing better. There's no excuses as far as I'm concerned. Rookies can be competitive, but so far he is under-delivering. So the safety car comes out because of the debris. Hamilton and Russell double stack, and this actually costs Leclerc. And to be fair, Leclerc was kind of the sacrificial lamb here for Ferrari because he was on soft tyres and they were then degrading. The Mercedes of Russell would have been probably on Sainz's gearbox, but that wasn't the case because Leclerc held him back. So it was well played for Ferrari. Leclerc would have a difficult time doing anything, but they wanted the win today. Leclerc got held up by the pits, so I believe Hamilton jumped him as well actually at the restart. Also, that's what we see here, with then some big battles, because Verstappen and Perez were on hards. They really had no choice but to stay out, but they were kind of sitting ducks here toward the traffic, and Perez got overtaken, of course, by plenty of drivers, as did Verstappen. Sainz just rolls away into the distance, and yeah, so Verstappen actually got overtaken for the first time this year, which is kind of wild, but every single Grand Prix so far this season, Verstappen has only been doing the overtaking. The only time he's actually been overtaken was by Liam Lawson in Zandvoort, when Lawson unlapped himself on the same compounded tyres. So that kind of was an an overtake, but then the blue flags came out and Verstappen went back through again on him. So this was the first time, and obviously there was a tyre delta here, right? Verstappen's tyres are way older, so it wasn't, but the moves were on merit to some degree. They were for position, as it were. And so Norris gets the move done. I think Verstappen said after the race to Norris that I didn't defend that. I wanted to let you go. He defended a bit more against Hamilton, but I think he knew that it was not worth it. I'm sure Hamilton had a bit of a smile on his face when he got this move done on Verstappen in, to keep up with the lead pack as it was at the time. There were some great battles further back. Alonso had a nightmare as well today. He had some issue with his suspension. The car was undrivable, he said. He spun the car, had a terrible pit stop, and finishes outside of the points, right? So only Verstappen and Hamilton, the two drivers that have finished in the points now every race this season. And of course, Hamilton jumps Alonso in the championship we'll get into. Red Bull, though, then decided, all right, our tyres are dead. Perez's tyres were dead. Verstappen's had a bit more life, but it was basically over. And they reckoned, all right, it's time to go. Lap 40 they pitted, and the safety car comes out on the VSC on lap 43, so that didn't help Red Bull either. And I feel bad for Ocon because he was pulling off some moves. He had a beautiful move, I think on Perez it was actually, but then I think some sort of gearbox failure, and I think it was Esteban's birthday as well today, so not a good birthday present from Alpine, but that's Alpine, baby. That's what you sign up for with this team, it seems. VSC comes out. Many would have said safety car, but actually the VSC gave us the grandstand finale to the race that we had by maintaining the gaps and allowing alternate strategies. Ferrari decided, and you can say it was the right decision in hindsight just because of how the race ended, but it did require a Carlos Sainz Masterclass to pull this off. But Mercedes went for the double stack. Russell comes in, Hamilton comes in right behind him, and they come out 20 or so seconds behind Carlos Sainz in the lead. And Hamilton at this point of the race was absolutely flying, as was Russell. And I don't exactly know what it is about Lewis Hamilton and final stint, but if you put Hamilton on fresh tyres with 20 laps to go, there is no faster driver in the world. I mean, Verstappen maybe, but we don't get to see Verstappen do an awful lot of recovery drives anymore. So, but Hamilton is always just insane in those situations. Fresh tyres on him, just unbelievable pace. I mean, he was setting ridiculous sector times, closing in on Russell, closed in 5 seconds on Russell in not that many laps, and was probably poised to take the win if Russell had decided to bin it on lap 52 rather than on lap 62. So Hamilton had mega pace here in this stint, and we can see here, Norris was doing a 138.4, George was on a 137.0, Hamilton was a half a second up on that. The pace he had advantage in this level of the race. I mean, it's always the Hamilton thing, right? It's hammer time. That part of the race on low fuel, whatever it is, Hamilton's always mega in those situations. And honestly, if there was no George Russell here, I think we could well have had a different winner today. Because Russell had, frankly, look, both of their tyres were overheating. This is the thing. You've got to catch up a big gap. They had to overtake a couple of cars, get through Leclerc and all this to catch up to the leaders in Sainz and Norris. And by that time, the tyres are kind of cooked, right? I mean, the tyres are overheating. George had pretty much cooked his tyres, and George could not follow as close to Lando as Hamilton could follow to George. So it seemed like Lewis had more life in his tyres. Russell did give it a good go here to overtake Norris, but Norris again defended well. Bit of straight line speed in that McLaren actually came to his favour again. And it was a brilliant piece of defensive driving from Carlos Sainz, because the lap time delta between the tyres at this point was significant between the old hards and the older mediums, but still much faster tyres. Sainz decided, and this is something that I watch quite a lot of F1 esports, right? So, and it's a pretty common strategy in that situation would be to give the guy behind you DRS to keep someone else behind. So even before this took place, I was like, that's probably what Sainz will try and do. But it's one thing in the esport, in the game itself, when you can look in the top left and see, the delta's plus 0.801 or whatever to the guy behind. I can just manage that and constantly look at the top left. When you're driving a car in this cockpit, can barely see anything. All you've got to work on is your engineer in your ear telling you occasionally what the the deltas are, and your wing mirrors to judge the gap. How close is Lando? Is that 0.8? Is that 0.6? Because if it's 0.5, Lando might overtake you and win the race. So you have to judge that really well as Carlos Sainz to make that work and to drop back, give Lando the DRS in order to help him defend. Very impressive work from Sainz. Honestly, really impressive. And then we get this moment, which is just... iconic, honestly. I was on a train coming back from London and the internet was intermittent and it just came back as I saw this. Like, this is just going to live rent-free in my mind for ages. It's one of those moments like when Webber, you guys know what he said a few years ago, when Russell just goes straight on. The crazy thing is that Brundle was talking about during the race that you kind of get mesmerized by the car in front of you, hypnotized by it, shall we say. And Norris actually also clipped the wall right where Russell clipped the wall, because basically the wall going into this turn goes out and then back in again. It's kind of like that tricky corner in Baku, actually, towards the end of the middle sector. And the same thing happened here. Russell clipped the wall but got away with it. George clipped the wall, broke his suspension, and he was out of the race. This is half a lap before the end of the Grand Prix. So, yeah, incredible scenes. Russell bins it in the wall. I feel bad for him, really, given the circumstances that he was about to get a podium, and a really heart-fought podium at that. Like, Russell qualified well, drove a great race, and, gets rewarded by bidding it in the wall himself. But we'll get back to that in a second. But what can you not say about Carlos Sainz? And look, I think Leclerc is a phenomenal driver, and he did kind of get screwed over today in some respects. But for whatever reason, Carlos Sainz is the in-form man at the moment. He drove well in Monza, and, he drove phenomenally today. Strategy, everything was on point for Sainz, and well-deserved the victory. I do wonder, because I think that Hamilton, if Russell had, as I say, if he'd have binned it on lap 52, not lap 62, I think Hamilton gets at least Norris. I don't know if Hamilton gets Sainz, just because Sainz would have defended this with his life. I mean, we saw the defending that Sainz was doing back in Monza against Leclerc for that podium in Monza. Like, he was forcing him off track. Every trick in the book Sainz was employing. So I don't know if Sainz would have let Hamilton past at any cost, to be honest. But anyway, Verstappen gets back to P5 after Russell crashes out. A very impressive recovery from Verstappen, actually, because he had a lot of pace at the end, closed up like 18 seconds in 5 laps on Leclerc. So it's quite clear that in clear air, that Red Bull on those tyres and the mediums in low fuel conditions was still a force to be reckoned with. But it was Hamilton with the fastest overall pace. It was Hamilton with the fastest lap at the end of the Grand Prix. But Ferrari gained quite big points on Mercedes today. And, Russell was not happy about that. We can see him here walking back. Obviously, whenever the driver keeps the helmet on, that's when you know that, but behind the helmet, they don't want you to see what their face is looking like, right? He did eventually have to face the media. I'll just share this quickly because, you can hear the lump in his throat, like he's trying not to tear up here, right? And apparently he did tear up after the media session concluded because, just gutted and heartbroken at how close he got and that he bottled it in the way that a rookie might.
No words, to be honest. Such a long race, physical race. Difficult to keep concentration when Carlos was doing a great job back in the pack-up, not allowing us to do the alternative strategy. I think we were half a car's length from winning the race had I got past Lando when I had the opportunity. I think we'd have been able to get past Carlos, and then just the last lap, millimetre lapse of concentration and game over. So just so sorry to the whole team, and I feel like I let myself down and my team down, but racing, it's tough, but we'll come back.
So apparently then Russell had his sunglasses on and was basically just crying his eyes out and saying like, what am I, a rookie or something like this. So yeah, I feel bad for George. I know that he'll bounce back from this. The question that I have really for Mercedes is that if they want to beat Red Bull next year in the constructors and certainly in the drivers, they will need to make some decisions as to what their team situation looks like. This time next year, if Hamilton is ahead of Russell in the championship and they're fighting Max for the win or whoever they're fighting, they're going to have to tell Russell to get out of the way because they will cost each other points as they have done now. Now, to be honest, Hamilton doesn't really have anyone else to blame but himself. And he actually did this in the post-race interview and said, look, I just need to qualify better. If Russell can put it P2, 700ths off pole, I can put it pole, is basically what he said. And I think he made some setup adjustment, Hamilton, going into qualifying yesterday that he thought was going to work. It didn't work. And that's a few times that's happened this season now that it gave him less confidence that he wanted. So Hamilton knows that, sure, would have been nice nice if Russell got out of the way, but if he just qualified better, then he'd be in a prime position to capitalise on situations like this weekend's. But that's going to live, as I say, rent-free for me for a long time. Like, it's not often you see someone like that where there's 4 cars battling for the win on the final lap of the race, and one of them goes straight on and bins. I mean, he hit the wall, he didn't lock up really, you could see the sparks and everything, the car was damaged beyond repair, and yeah, Hamilton gets through for the podium. Remarkable scenes. I will say also, if that 4-way battle for the win had been for P3, it doesn't hit the same, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what you say about, oh, well, it doesn't matter if Red Bull are 1-2 because it's good racing behind. It's like, I don't care, really. If it's a battle for the win, I care. If it's a battle for the final podium spot, it doesn't hit the same, you know? And today hit different, right? And it kind of gives you a glimpse of what life could be like without Red Bull in the fight week in, week out. The thing is, for Red Bull, is that they will be back, right? I mean, I think you can tell by the pace that of especially Verstappen at the end of this race that if their car is within a 10th or 2 of pole position, they're going to have a car that's way faster in race trim. And I'm pretty sure that'll be the case again next weekend in Suzuka. But, you know, the TD, other factors, we will discuss them over the coming days. This as well was an outrageous attempt here by Perez, who comes from this far back, by the way. And he decides, I think Albon said on the radio that he tried this a few times before, and he just sends it absolutely down the inside. A move that is never on, by the way, in these conditions. Just bangs it into the side of Albon, by the way, here. And, I mean, like, the angle of Perez's car here is outrageous compared to Albon's. Just, and forces Albon out the way, makes contact with him, and, yeah, they eventually gave him a penalty for this, but it was only a 5-second penalty, which kept him in P8. So, again, more questionable stewarding decisions between, you know, Red Bull and the FIA, as we saw after qualifying with Verstappen not getting a grid drop despite the slam dunk penalty I thought it was with Tsunoda. But of course, you know how it is with AlphaTauri and Red Bull. You could argue that the relationship they have should not really be allowed. But just to close out with, this is the race pace statistics. Actually, the 2 Mercedes, as you might expect with the fastest cars. Now, Sainz probably had more pace in hand, but he was just, you know, he was managing what he needed to manage, right? Verstappen was really quick at the end, as you guys can tell, and ended up only about 3/10 down on average, despite being stuck in traffic for a large part of the race. And obviously, the strategy didn't favour him with the safety cars and stuff. So, yeah, very impressive recovery from Verstappen. Red Bull clearly has a lot of pace still. And despite the poor weekend for Red Bull, breaking their streak, Verstappen's podium streak comes to an end at every race since Brazil last year. Red Bull's podium streak and race win streak comes to an end. Their Q3 appearance streak comes to an end. But still, Verstappen extends his championship lead on Perez. But Hamilton gets Alonso, and it doesn't look like he's going to be looking back from there. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Long video today because there was a lot to get through. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.